Hello everybody and welcome to another video of English No Big Deal. My name is Maddie.
And my name is David.
And today we are going to go over 15 phrases for conversation 15. So why is conversation 15 so important?
Conversation 15 is important because it's once again a weather-related topic. And weather is a very common topic that people have in their small talk. Now, if you've been watching and learning all of the previous videos that we created, then you'll know that we have released a video about weather before. And in that video, the topic is about a winter blizzard. So it was about the cold and the struggles that people might face when that phenomenon happens. But in conversation 15, it's the exact opposite because it's about a heat wave. And a heat wave for me is a much more common phenomenon in a lot of countries or regions in the world. So not only you can use this conversation to talk about a heat wave and the problems that people have when this weather condition happens, but you can also use and embed these expressions and ideas in this conversation into a summer-related topic.
Another thing that typically happens in the summer is traveling. And I know for sure that when people are traveling during the summer, I've heard some of these phrases pop up in their conversation when they're talking about what they experienced. So for example, when my friend went to Florida, she actually experienced the extreme heat and she wasn't used to it. So she did use some of these phrases. So that's just one more way you can use these phrases in your own topic.
Now, without further ado, let's get started.
Number 1, something doesn't do something justice.
My God, this heat is unbearable.
I don't think it's all that bad. But then again, I come from a tropical country, so I suppose my opinion won't do it justice because I'm better adapted to it than you.
Now the pronunciation you need to keep in mind for this phrase is upon the word justice. Now there are a few pronunciation points, the first one being the j sound. Make sure it is the voiced ch sound and not the voiceless ch sound. Don't say justice. Justice. That's not correct. It's justice. Justice. Now the second one is the S sounds in this word. Do not drop either S sound. Don't say justice, justice. That's not correct. Justice, justice, justice. If you have to say it slowly in order to get both S sounds in this word, that's completely fine, as long as it's clear. But don't drop either because then nobody will understand what you're saying. Now I'm going to say the whole word together. Justice, justice, justice.
Now, if A doesn't do B justice, it means that A is described or presented in a way that it is not equal or comparable or even right to be. So going back to the conversation, David thinks that the heat wave is not that bad, but it is unbearable in Maddie's opinion. And then he says, maybe because he comes from a tropical country, so he's better adapted to it than Maddie is. That's why he believes that his opinion about the heat wave won't do it justice. Just like the way it feels about the cold weather or a winter blizzard for somebody who comes from a tropical country. Now, in the conversation, A here is David's opinion about the heat wave, while B is how Maddie perceives and feels about the heat wave. And in this situation, David's opinion won't do it justice is because it's not relevant, applicable, or comparable to how Maddie feels about the heat wave. Now, whatever you use for the modal verb, whether you used doesn't or won't, one thing in common here that you guys can see is that all the sentences are in a negative form. So it won't do it justice or it doesn't do it justice. Rather than using this phrase to talk about the weather, you can use it in a variety of situations in daily life.
Another very common situation that this phrase is used in is to talk about pictures. I hear this all the time if somebody is describing the beauty of a place and just looking at the picture doesn't do the place justice because it is more beautiful and stunning in real life. So for this phrase to make more sense, let's give you guys some examples. The first example, the photographs of Machu Picchu don't do it justice. So I've heard this so many times. People who go visit Machu Picchu overlooking the valley, that is so stunning to see in real life. And even though you can see the beauty in the picture, it's not as memorable or beautiful as it is if you were there in person.
Because when you are there in person, not only that you can see the spectacular scene with your own eyes, but you can feel the atmosphere and how other people who are also travelers or visitors talk about it. That's why some photos or pictures about the place won't do its beauty justice. Now, the second example that I have for you guys is, since Maddie is a native speaker of English, her opinion about how difficult the language is won't do it justice.
That's true. I think the language is pretty easy because I grew up learning it. So it's not comparable to somebody who is learning English as a second language. So my opinion of how easy it is won't do it justice for somebody who's learning English.
That's why it's going to be a total disaster if you go to Maddie and you ask her for her opinion about how difficult or easy the language is.
I can admit it would be a disaster.
Number 2, can't stand somebody or something, or doing something, or to do something.
I can't stand it when the temperature gets above 37 degrees Celsius. It's just too hot for me.
Now, the pronunciation points for this phrase are pretty simple, and the first point has to do with the word can't. Now, notice the word can't ends with the T sound and is in its negative form, so you can turn the T sound at the end into a stop T sound because it's going to be more natural and native that way. So can. Put everything that you are using within your mouth in order to put them into the right position as if you're about to say it, but you stop it right there, like any of the previous videos that I talked about how to stop a sound. And the second point of this phrase is upon the word stand. Notice the N sound, even though it stands just right in the middle of the word. The N sound, because it's a nasal sound, that's why it has to be strong and very distinctly pronounced. Stand, stand, stand. And the last point is also upon this word, the D sound at the end. So you can either stop the D sound or enunciate it. So stand or stand. Stand. So make sure you understand when you stop the D sound here, it is going to be slightly different from the way that you stop the T sound at the end of the word can. Because of the D sound here, it has to have a little bit of a sound enunciated in your throat, but you don't say it aloud. And that's all the pronunciation points you should remember for this phrase.
Now, to use this phrase, first we're going to talk about what comes after the word stand. So you can use either a noun, a verb ending in ing, or a verb with to in front of it. So for example, I can't stand the heat, I can't stand being in this heat, and I can't stand to be in this heat. All of these ways are correct, so feel free to use this in a variety of situations or ways. Now, if you can't stand something, that means you hate it, you can't tolerate it, or you find the thing unbearable. Going back to the conversation, Maddie said she can't stand it when the temperature gets above 37 degrees Celsius. So all this means is she can't tolerate it when the temperature gets above 37. She hates it. It's too hot. She finds the temperature unbearable. Another situation, like we said, you can't stand somebody. That means you hate them, you can't tolerate them. For example, I can't stand him. I don't like him, I dislike him, or I cannot tolerate being around him. So that's just another way you can use can't stand. Giving you guys some examples. I can't stand driving in bad weather conditions. I hate it. I can't tolerate it. I find it unbearable.
And I think not only you, but a majority of us can't stand or like driving a car in a bad weather condition. Now, going on to the next example. I can't stand his attitude when things go wrong in the office. Maybe his attitude or the way that he deals with problems when they arise is to blame other people. And that's why I don't want to argue with him and I can't stand that behavior at all.
I think a lot of people that they work with will not tolerate the blaming behavior. It's difficult to deal with people like that because you don't want to be blamed for their mistakes. So maybe you'll avoid working with that person and tell the boss about what's going on, and that person might be fired because a lot of businesses will not put up with or tolerate that blaming attitude.
Wouldn't it be nice if everybody was trying to solve the problems by working together and not blaming, right?
I think that's a healthy way to work rather than having a toxic workplace with blaming behavior. Number 3, hot and stuffy.
At least you have the option to stay indoors with the AC on at work.
That's partially true, but I use the train to get to work, not to mention how packed the train is going to be on the way home during rush hour. People pack onto the train cars like sardines, so the AC won't have a chance to reach me. It's going to be too hot and stuffy.
There are 2 pronunciation points you need to keep in mind for this phrase. The first one being the connecting between hot and. That T sound changes to a D because it's in between vowels, and you'll bring that sound over in front of and. Hot dan, hot dan, hot and stuffy, hot and stuffy. Now, the second way that this phrase can be pronounced is you shorten and to just the n sound. Hot and stuffy, hot and stuffy. I've heard this phrase used in both ways, so both ways are correct. Now I'll say this phrase slowly and try and shadow me. Hot and stuffy, hot and stuffy. Now the second way, hot and stuffy, hot and stuffy.
When a place is hot and stuffy, that means that place is really hot and it doesn't have a lot of fresh air for you to breathe in. In the conversation, Maddie used this phrase to talk about the conditions on the train on her way home. But you can use this to talk about a variety of places that have the same condition. For example, the classroom is hot and stuffy. When it doesn't have any AC on, it has a lot of people or students in it, and all of its windows are closed. And in that situation, you can say the classroom is hot and stuffy. Or another way you can say about it is the classroom is smothering.
Ooh man, I hate conditions where you're stuck in a hot and stuffy place because it makes you feel really icky. You feel like it's terrible and unbearable to stay in a hot and stuffy place.
Now, let me give you the first example using this phrase. It is horrible when you have to spend hours waiting in a hot and stuffy hospital. And this is a very common scenario if you've ever been to an Asian country and having to go to one of the hospitals they have there. For example, in Vietnam, if you happen to go to one of the most crowded and popular hospitals in Ho Chi Minh City, then you'll know how chaotic the environment is there. They have people everywhere on the sidewalk, in the washroom, like almost everywhere. And the rooms are small with an insufficient AC system. So they don't have enough air for you to breathe, and sometimes the environment is so smothering, especially in those small rooms. And in that scenario, you can say those small rooms in the hospital are really hot and stuffy.
Wow, I can just imagine how horrible it would be to be stuck in a hot and stuffy hospital. I would dread having to go there. Now, let me give you one more example. I hate living in a hot and stuffy basement, so I leave the windows open to get some fresh air. Here, I am solving the problem of having to live in a hot and stuffy basement by leaving the windows open. This brings in enough fresh air that even though it might still be hot, you don't feel it's stuffy.
Number 4, have to do with or have anything to do with. But didn't you say that you would like to travel to some countries in Asia and Africa?
Yeah, but what does that have to do with this heat wave?
The pronunciation for this phrase is very basic and simple, and all you have to be aware of is the ending sounds of the word have and with. So with the word have, it ends with the V sound, and it depends if you use the word has or had. Also notice the S sound and the D sound at the end of those words. So make sure you enunciate them in a very proper way. So have, has, or had. And the last one is with. So with ends with the TH sound, and in this particular situation, it's the voiceless TH sound. And in order to pronounce it, all you have to do is to stick your tongue out a little bit like this, right? And say with. So let me say the whole phrase one more time. Have to do with and have anything to do with.
If A has to do with B, that means A is connected, relevant, or associated to B. Now, in the conversation, Maddie asked, what does traveling to Asian and African countries have to do with the heat wave? So, in David's opinion, the heat wave was somehow connected to traveling to those Asian and African countries. That's why Maddie asked, what does traveling have to do with the heat wave? Now, this phrase is most commonly used as a question. So you can begin the question with what, how, and why. Now, let me give you a scenario so this makes more sense. Lucy is being fired from her job because of a mistake. So she can say, what does this mistake have to do with me? How does this mistake have anything to do with me? And why does this mistake have anything to do with me? Now, notice with the first question, what does this mistake have to do with me? First, you cannot use anything in this question if you're using the word what. Also, you have to use the word have. So, what does this mistake have to do with me? Now, all of these ways are correct. Just be careful when you are using the word what. Now, let me give you the first example. Your test result doesn't have anything to do with the teacher, but has everything to do with your learning effort. So you cannot blame the teacher for your bad test. You actually blame it on the fact that you might not have studied for the test. So your test result doesn't have anything to do with the teacher. So it's not associated, relevant, or even connected to what the teacher does, but it is connected to the way you are learning.
I think it's a great example. And the second example I have here is, the storm doesn't have anything to do with the power going out. Somebody just accidentally short-circuited the house.
So at first they might have thought that the storm was connected to the power outage in the house, but turns out it wasn't connected at all. Somebody just accidentally short-circuited the house.
Or in short, the power going out is not a result of the storm that's going on out there, but it is a result of somebody short-circuiting the house. Maybe that person accidentally switched something off, or he plugged in a lot of things into the same outlet.
Number 5, blistering heat.
Take this as an opportunity for some training and getting used to the blistering heat.
The pronunciation for this phrase is pretty simple, but we're still going to go over the word blistering. Be careful and make sure that that st sound is very clear. Blistering, blistering. Don't say blittering. Okay? Be careful. Blistering. Blistering heat.
Similar to the previous phrase, hot and stuffy, this phrase is also used to talk about how hot a place is. And you can use this phrase in two scenarios. The first one is, it is too hot for you to be in. And you feel extremely hot, you feel extremely smothering with the environment. And the second scenario is when you feel like the heat from that particular condition can cause some blisters on your skin. Now, what is a blister? A blister is a bubble that you get on your skin when you touch something hot, for example, a hot pan or a hot pot on the stove, or when you are in a terrible, inhospitable environment such as a desert. If you are in a desert that has blazing heat or scalding heat or blistering heat, that means if you are exposing your skin to that kind of heat, it's going to cause blisters on your skin. That's why you call it blistering heat. Now, let me give you the first example. To escape from the blistering heat of the summer, a lot of people decide to go to the malls or swimming pools.
That's probably why you always see the swimming pools so crowded, because people are trying to cool off from the blistering heat. Or when you go to the shopping mall, since they have AC, that's a great way to get out of the blistering heat. Another example, during the day, deserts are inhospitable because of the blistering heat and long periods of drought. Wow, I can really imagine how hard it would be to stay in the desert in that kind of heat, and I would probably end up getting blisters on my skin because of being exposed to the sun for too long.
Number 6, a silver lining. And in many places you mentioned you would like to go in Asia, they'll also be humid, and this factor makes this whole thing even worse.
How is it that you're able to find a silver lining in this situation?
It isn't necessarily a silver lining, just something that can help you when you travel. To pronounce this phrase correctly, first you need to be aware of the L sound in the middle of the word silver. Silver. So the L sound right there, native speakers are still rolling their tongue in order to make the L sound distinct. So silver. And it's very different compared to the pronunciation when you don't roll your tongue with the L sound. So make sure you say silver, silver. And the second point of this phrase's pronunciation is upon the word lining, lining. Just similar to the way that I instructed you guys on the pronunciation for the word stand. So the N sound in this word lining has to be distinctly pronounced as well. So silver lining, silver lining, silver lining.
Silver lining is an idiom and used to talk about finding a positive aspect or a good thing in an unfavorable situation. Going back to the conversation, Maddie asked David how he could possibly find a silver lining in the situation of the heat wave. Meaning, how could David possibly find something positive in the situation of the heat wave? Now, this idiom is similar to the phrase, the bright side. When you look at the bright side, you're also looking at one positive thing in an unfavorable situation. The first example, finding the silver lining in difficulties, is a skill that successful people have to build. This is something that a lot of people have to do. If you always try to focus on the negative thing, then you will never see the one positive thing that could teach you a good lesson.
Let me give you the second example. Even though you're sacked by your current company, but the silver lining is you can always find a better place for a better job. Of course, getting fired by your company can make you feel really terrible, upset, and unhappy. But by thinking or looking at the bright side, or finding yourself a silver lining in this particular situation will not only make you feel happier, but also open up a lot of opportunities for you to find a better place with a better job in the future.
Number 7, chapstick.
With that aside, be sure to drink enough water. Bring your chapstick and sunscreen with you all the time, especially during this heat.
Now there are 2 pronunciation points we need to be aware of. The first one is upon the ah sound in chapstick. Don't change it to the aw sound. Don't say chopstick. Otherwise, you're talking about the wooden cutlery commonly used in Asian countries. So, chapstick, chapstick. Now, the other pronunciation point is the p sound. Don't enunciate the sound too much. Don't say chapstick, chapstick. That is not correct. You stop the sound and make it light. Chapstick, chapstick. But be careful and do not drop the sound completely. Don't say chastic, chastic. That's not correct. So, chapstick, chapstick.
Chapstick is the soft wax you use to moisturize your lips. In the cold and dry countries like Canada and the US, if you don't use chapstick for your lips, they'll crack, hurt, and bleed. Besides the term chapstick, people also used lip balm as its alternative. Now, let me give you the first example. I don't usually carry a lot of things with me, but chapstick is one of the most essential things that I always have.
That's because we live here in Canada and it is so dry that our lips would crack a lot if we went out and we didn't have it. And the second example, doctors recommend not sharing chapstick to avoid getting mono. So mono is a disease that you get when you share things like chapstick or water bottles. So to avoid getting it, just don't share chapstick.
Number 8. To suffer something or to suffer from something. I saw on the news there are 3 people who passed out and another 2 suffered from a heat stroke in the city. The pronunciation for these phrases is also simple, and I'm not going to focus on the first phrase but the second one because it's a little bit more challenging compared to the first one. So to suffer from. So the word suffer is supposed to be pronounced very, very clearly. Suffer, suffer, suffer. Don't forget to roll your tongue inside of your mouth to enunciate very clearly the R sound at the end. Suffer, and then from. And the word from with its existence in this second phrase makes this whole thing a little more challenging compared to the first one. So suffer from, suffer from, to suffer from. Alright?
So when you suffer something, you talk about your experience with it, especially unpleasant things like injury or loss. But when you suffer from something, that means you are badly affected by that thing, let's say, like a disease, cancer, or even hostile living conditions. These things impact you and your life. Now, sometimes you can use these phrases to talk about the same thing. For example, he suffered a heart attack, and he suffered from a heart attack. So the first one, he suffered a heart attack. That just means he experienced a heart attack, but it didn't impact his life in any other way. But if you say he suffered from a heart attack, then that means his life has changed in some way, whether it's big or small, because of that heart attack. In the conversation, David said 3 people passed out and 2 suffered from a heat stroke. So that heat stroke that they had impacted their lives in some way. Maybe they had to go to the emergency room or something else, but it impacted their life negatively. For these phrases to make more sense, let's give you some examples. The first one, many people suffer from poverty and starvation in the world. So these 2 things negatively impact those people's lives. Maybe they can't always afford to buy food and they're starving, so of course it is negatively impacting them.
Wow, what a great example. Just similar to how it is in the second example I have here. She suffered a great loss when the company went belly up. That means the company went out of business and now she probably suffered it because she owned it and she had contributed to the company in order to build it from scratch. And now all of a sudden her company went belly up or her company went bankrupt. Saying she suffered a great loss in this situation means she probably didn't make any money in order to sustain the lifestyle of her family and herself anymore.
Number 9, hydrate and hydration.
I'm not worried about getting sunburn, but you're right. It is essential to stay hydrated. Luckily, I brought my water bottle with me, which means fewer trips to the drinking fountain.
For the pronunciation for these words, we're going to concentrate on the dr sound. It is important to make sure that this dr is pronounced clearly and accurately. Don't change it to the tr sound. That's not correct. So hydrate and hydration. Don't say hydrate or hydration. That's not correct. Now, if you have to, practice these words slowly. That way you're saying it accurately. So you can say hydrate, hydrate, and hydration, hydration.
To hydrate somebody or something is to make them drink water or hold water. And hydration is just a process of making that happen. So hydrate is a verb. Hydrated can also be used in a very common way as a passive voice, and hydration is just its noun. Now in the conversation, Maddie said it is essential to stay hydrated. But you can also say it is essential to hydrate yourself. That means it is very essential, it is crucial, it is vital, extremely important to drink a lot of water. Now let's move on to the first example using these words. In summer, you have to hydrate your plants daily, otherwise they'll wilt and wither away.
If you don't do it, of course the plants are going to dry out and they might even die. You don't want to see wilted or dead plants in your home, so hydrate them or water them daily. And the second example, experts suggest drinking 2 liters of water daily to keep yourself hydrated.
Otherwise, your body is going to run out of water, and at the end of the day, not only that you feel tired and thirsty, you're also going to experience some severe headaches and dizziness. In severe cases, you might have to be hospitalized because you didn't hydrate your body and yourself very well. Number 10, a gag gift.
Oh, and I almost forgot. My mom sent me a gag gift. It's a personal fan. I never thought it would come in handy.
A very interesting point that you can notice about this phrase is that it has a lot of g sounds. And when pronouncing it, make sure that you enunciate them as well. So gag, when it is pronounced alone like this. So gag, it has 2 g sounds, right? So make sure that those sounds are really good in your mouth. G sound, gag. Its vowel here is an a sound, and when it is followed by the next word, gift, it also starts with a g sound. So if there are 2 g sounds standing just next to each other like this, you can actually shorten one and only have to pronounce one. So gag and then gift, gift. For the second word in this phrase, gift, you also need to remember to pronounce its ending sound. Ft, ft, gift, gift. So gag gift. A gag gift.
Now, the word gag has many different meanings, but in this phrase, it is similar to funny. Now, a gag gift is just a gift that is given and it's meant to be funny. It never really has any actual purpose or any use because, again, it's just supposed to be a funny gift. Now, in the conversation, Madison said her mom gave her a gag gift of a personal fan. She thought it was never going to be used or ever be useful to her, but the funny thing is now she actually has a use for that gag gift. Now, even though the word gift can be used interchangeably with present, be careful and do not say gag present. Nobody says that. Everyone says gag gift. If you say gag present, they might look at you a little funny. So make sure to say gag gift. Now for this phrase to make some more sense, let's give you some examples. I was going to send my friend a gag gift for his birthday. I was only going to send my friend a gift that is meant to be funny. He probably won't be able to use it in his daily life, but at least it'll give him a good laugh.
And since you're talking about a gag gift that is supposed to be funny, then my next example is going to follow the exact same line as well. A jack in the box can be a great gag gift for someone who's very jumpy.
That is a great funny gift because not only will it give the person who receives that gift a good laugh, but anybody else who watches him open it and he gets scared just because of that gift. Number 11, come in handy.
I never thought it would come in handy.
To pronounce this phrase properly, first we're going to go over the connecting between come and in. We bring that sound over to in and we say come in, come in, come in. And the last pronunciation point for this phrase is upon the word handy. So to pronounce it properly in North American English, that ah sound has to be very clear. Handy, handy. Don't say handy, handy. That's not correct. So to make this sound properly, you have to drop your jaw a little bit farther and open your mouth just a bit wider. Handy. If you do make your mouth smaller, then you would be making the eh sound. Eh. See the difference in my mouth? Ah, eh. Ah, eh. Now, people might not notice if you use the eh sound and say handy, but to build good pronunciation habits, make sure you're saying handy, handy. Again, a wide mouth. Handy. Come in handy.
Now, if something comes in handy, it means it's useful. And you may not use it as frequently. That's why native speakers tend to use the word might in front of this phrase. So they say, might come in handy. If something might come in handy, they're just talking about or emphasizing the possibility of it being useful. You can also use the word handy as an adjective to mean useful. So that's why you can say a handy tip, a handy tool, a handy man. Now, let me give you the first example. The information of filing taxes that he gave you may come in handy when you have to do it on your own.
That is so true. A lot of people, they don't know how to file taxes on their own. So if somebody is giving you tips or giving you some handy information, then it'll be really great if you do have to file taxes on your own. The second example, money always comes in handy in a pinch. Maybe there was a really bad situation and you needed to have quite a bit of money on hand. So having enough savings will always come in handy in a pinch.
I think having enough money is all good in all circumstances. Number 12, going back to the point that, or going back to something.
Going back to the points that you mentioned about the news, did you see the section where they discussed how the city's now handling situations where people leave pets and children in hot cars?
Now, the only word you should remember for your good pronunciation here is point. Remember how I talked about the importance of enunciating the N sound, especially when it is standing in the middle of words before? In this situation, you'll do the same thing. Point, point. Please don't say point, 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 because it's very different in the ear of native speakers. And the second phrase is going back to something. It is a lot easier, so we don't have to go over any pronunciation point for this one.
Now, these phrases are a great way to change the topic back to something that was mentioned previously. So do not use this if you're bringing up a new topic. If you say going back to the point and it's something completely new, you might confuse or throw off the other person. So make sure that is something that is previously mentioned. In the conversation, Maddie said, going back to the point that you mentioned about the news. So that means the news was something that Maddie and David already talked about within this conversation. So Maddie wanted to change the topic back to that, and so she used this phrase. For this phrase to make more sense, let's give you some examples. The first example, we got a little off track here, but going back to the point of how to improve the company, what is your inputs? So maybe the conversation started out with how to improve the company, and they got off topic or off track. And so to bring it back to the main point, the person said, going back to the point of how to improve the company.
Wow, what a great way to pull everybody's attention back to its original topic. The second example I have here is going back to what the teacher told me. He said, listening skills take the longest time to improve.
So maybe the topic started out with talking about what the teacher told you in class, and the topic had changed a little bit, and so you wanted to bring it back to the previous point or where it started, saying going back to what the teacher told me.
Or else, the conversation is going to be carried on the wrong path, and a lot of people will be lost in it.
Number 13, to dispatch.
Due to this heat wave, people are saying that if you see a kid or a pet locked in a hot car, to 1, call the emergency services line so that they can dispatch a police officer.
Now for this word, there are actually quite a few pronunciation points we need to be careful of. The first one, the s sound. Don't drop it or skip it. Don't say dispatch, dispatch, not correct. Dispatch, dispatch. The next pronunciation point, the p sound. Don't change it to the b sound. Don't say dispatch, dispatch, not correct. Dispatch, patch. And the very last point, the ch sound. Dispatch. That voiceless ch sound has to be clear. Ch, ch. Now say this word with me slowly. Dispatch, dispatch, dispatch.
The word dispatch is typically used with public service people such as police, firefighters, and paramedics. Dispatch can be a verb and can also be a noun. When it is a verb, if you dispatch something or somebody somewhere, that means you are sending that person or that something somewhere with a purpose. But when dispatch is a noun, it simply means the act of sending that person or that something somewhere with a purpose. In the US, the dispatch system for public emergencies have to be in timely manner.
If it's going slow and there's an emergency, that can be really critical. Maybe some people can pass away if they're taking too long to dispatch an emergency services person to help them. Now, the second example, I had to call my internet provider to help fix the system, and they dispatched somebody quickly.
That means they just send somebody to your house and fix the problem that you have with the internet. Number 14, in case of something, or in case that, or in the event of something.
And 2, to stay near the vehicle just in case of an emergency so you can open it.
To have good pronunciation for these phrases, you need to pay attention to the connection between the word case of and event and of. For the first one, in case of. So case ends with an S sound, and you bring that S over to of, you have case of, in case of, alright? And don't turn the S sound here into a Z sound and say in case of. And the second one is event of. In the event of, you can also drop the T right here and use the N sound and bring it over to of. You have in the event of or in the event of. Both ways are correct, and it depends on the way that you use it for yourself.
Now, these phrases are used to talk about if something happens. You're just saying that there is the possibility of something happening. Is it for sure going to happen? No. But it is possible that something is going to happen, and you need to prepare yourself. In the conversation, Maddie said, in case of an emergency, you need to stay next to the car. Now, that emergency might not happen, but it could possibly happen. So, to prepare, you need to stay next to the car. Now, the phrase in the event of is more formal, so you would use this in work or during a presentation in a setting that you need to be more formal, in the event of something happening. Now, to give you an example, in the event of a fire, stay calm and follow the protocols. So this is a more formal setting. Maybe you're at work. So of course they're going to use the formal phrase, in the event of. Now, is a fire for sure going to happen? No, but it's possible. So here they're using in the event of a fire.
Now, in that example, you use the phrase a fire as a noun that's coming after the word of. So, in the event of a fire. Now, let me give you guys another example that uses a clause. Just bring the umbrella with you in case it rains. So, after the word in case, I have a clause, even though this clause only contains 2 words, but it has the subject as it, and then it has a verb as rains. So, just bring the umbrella with you in case it rains.
And the last one, number 15, in the first place.
It is so sad to think that this has to happen in the first place, because now this incident is so common.
Now, the only pronunciation we need to be careful of is in the word place. Place. Be careful and don't change the p to the b. Don't say blaze. Blaze. Not correct. Place. Place.
So this phrase is very much similar to the phrase at the beginning or in the beginning, as well as to begin with. So going back to the conversation, David said, it is so sad to think that the fine for parents who leave their kids and pets in a hot car had to happen in the first place. That means that the fine wouldn't happen to begin with if the parents didn't leave their kids or pets in a hot car. Let me give you the first example so this phrase makes more sense. I should have told you in the first place that my parents are really strict, so we can't party in the house.
So that means you should have mentioned in the beginning that your parents are really strict. Now, the second example, don't blame me for not telling you in the first place, but if you fail this test, you need to retake the class.
I think this is a great way to start telling somebody of something that they should do or they shouldn't do at the beginning. Otherwise, the consequences might be a little bit too much to deal with later.
Now, those are all of the phrases for conversation 15. Be sure to go back to the conversation and check your understanding. It is essential to do this. That way you are able to remember these phrases even better.
And for this video, don't forget to go back and practice along with us so you know how to use these phrases in a much better and deeper way.
And now that you know these phrases, you'll be able to answer the questions in the next video.
And that's it for today's video. We hope you found this video helpful. And if you feel it that way, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel so you can continue learning and won't miss out on any of our future videos.
That is it for today. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.